Okay, so you want to own an airport, buy some land, pave a runway, rent out hangars, charge landing fees, and watch pilots pay you every time a plane touches down. No customers to chase door to door, just a strip of asphalt collecting money from the sky. It sounds like the ultimate passive income real estate play, and the scale is real. The FBO market, the companies that actually service and fuel private aircraft at these airports, is projected to reach $42.7 billion by 2033. But here's the twist nobody expects. In March 2003, Chicago's mayor sent bulldozers onto Meigs Field in the middle of the night and gouged giant X-shaped trenches into the runway while 16 small planes were still parked on the field, stranding them there permanently with zero warning to the FAA or a single pilot. That's not a metaphor. An entire working airport was destroyed overnight by the government that owned it. That gap between an asphalt strip quietly collecting fees and an asset that can be erased in a single night by a decision you don't control is exactly what this video walks through. By the end, you'll know why a fully rented hangar can still lose you money every month. The one piece of federal paperwork that quietly traps more airport owners than bad weather ever could. And why the world's largest FBO network sold for $73 billion, watched its own revenue collapse by more than a third in a single year. Before you buy an acre of land, understand this. An airport is not, fundamentally, an aviation business. That sounds strange, since the entire product is runways and fuel pumps, so stay with it. What you're actually selling is guaranteed space. The promise that a pilot's aircraft has somewhere safe, dry, and available to land, refuel, and sit overnight every single time, regardless of weather or how many other owners also want that same strip of pavement. The runway is just the surface that guarantee sits on. Every dollar you spend either protects that guarantee or quietly threatens. Let's talk about what it costs just to exist. A small private grass airstrip for personal use can be built for tens of thousands of dollars. Just cleared land and a graded strip. That sounds approachable. But the moment you want a real public use facility, the number changes entirely. Paved runway construction alone runs roughly $4,000 per linear meter before lighting, markings, drainage, or the environmental and safety studies regulators require. A single 15,000 square foot hangar, the kind actually large enough to hold business aircraft, cost around $1.8 million to build today. Then comes insurance. A small grass strip hosting light aircraft can insure for as little as $5,500 to $2,000 a year. But a real public use airport carries aviation general liability coverage, often written with a total limit of $20 million, covering the catastrophic risk of a single accident on your property. Add FAA compliance costs if you want commercial operations under Part 139 certification, ongoing safety inspections, and the legal and accounting overhead aviation authorities require before you ever collect a landing fee. Add it together, and even a modest public use general aviation facility runs into the millions before a single aircraft pays to land, with hangar construction alone commonly running past $1 million for a single building. That is the cost to exist in this business before the runway has ever been used. Now the cost to operate, and this is where owners get blindsided. The world's largest FBO network, Signature Aviation, employed roughly 8,000 people across 350 locations to keep its operations running. Ground crews, fuel line technicians, dispatchers, all specialized labor that can't simply be automated away. Add fuel itself, since every FBO buys aviation fuel wholesale and resells it, meaning your operating costs move directly with global oil markets, whether or not you've locked in your prices to customers. Add runway resurfacing, a routine but expensive maintenance cycle, and the fact that a single serious ground collision, like the $2.9 million accident at Melbourne International, can wipe out years of accumulated margin in one afternoon. Stack all of it together, and the land was never the hard part of this business. Here's the mechanism that quietly traps more airport owners than bad weather or bad luck, and it's called a grant assurance. Any airport that accepts federal airport improvement program funding, and most public use airports eventually do, signs a legal commitment to keep that airport open and publicly accessible for 20 years from every grant received, with each new grant extending the clock. Think of it like a loan you can never actually pay off early. The moment you take the money to fix your runway, you've also signed away your right to simply close, sell, or redevelop the property, no matter how the economics change underneath you. This is exactly what caught up with Chicago after the Meigs Field bulldoze. The city was found to have violated its grant assurance and was fined over $1 million by the FAA. Most small operators never read this clause until it's the only thing standing between them and an offer to sell their land for something far more profitable. The revenue model, on paper looks clean. Landing fees, fuel margin, and hangar rent multiplied by how many aircraft actually use your field. Hangar space alone rents for $0.40 to $0.7 per square foot monthly. So a fully leased 15,000 square foot hangar can generate real predictable income every month. On a spreadsheet, that's an attractive, diversified small business. But that clean formula assumes every hangar stays full. And that's exactly where the numbers collapse in practice. 71% of airports nationally report hangar shortages, waitlists stretching years long in some cases, while a poorly optimized or under-marketed hangar of the same size sits with empty bays and quietly loses more than $30,000 a year in unrealized rent. Two airport owners with identical buildings, identical square footage, and identical rates can post wildly different results based purely on how efficiently they fill that space. One runs near capacity and prints steady cash flow. The other has the same fixed mortgage, the same insurance bill, and half the tenants bleeding money on a building that looks, from the outside, exactly the same. Let's look at what this did to real operators. Signature Aviation, the world's largest FBO network, saw revenue collapse from $2.263 billion in 2019 to $1.414 billion in 2020, a 37.5% drop in a single year, as the pandemic grounded private aviation almost overnight. The company still recovered enough to be acquired by Blackstone, Global Infrastructure Partners, and Cascade for $4.73 billion the following year. But that recovery came only after a full year of losses no operator could have priced in. The lesson: even the largest, best diversified player in this entire industry can't insure itself against a shock that grounds its entire customer base at once. Then there's Meigs Field itself, a working single-runway airport on Chicago's lakefront for 60 years, home to hundreds of daily flights, destroyed in a matter of hours by the very city that owned it over disputes about lakefront property that had nothing to do with how well the airport itself was run. The lesson: your runway can be a perfectly profitable asset and still be erased entirely by a decision made in a city hall you don't control. Scenario 1. Everything goes right. A small public-use airport with one paved runway, 4 15,000 square foot hangars fully leased at $0.55 a square foot, plus landing and fuel margin revenue. Annual revenue, approximately $620. Annual costs, insurance, labor, maintenance, and fuel purchasing, approximately $420,000. Net operating profit, approximately $200,000 a year on a facility built for roughly $2 million. Scenario 2, the realistic version. Same runway, same hangars. This time, one hangar sits under leased at 60% occupancy, quietly losing over $30,000 in unrealized rent. Jet fuel prices spike, squeezing your resale margin. Your insurance renews 25% higher after a regional accident raises industry-wide premiums. And a new federal grant you accepted to resurface the runway locks you into another 20 years of grant assurance obligations, right as a developer offers to buy the land for triple its value. Annual revenue, approximately $480,000. Annual costs, approximately $460,000. Net operating profit, approximately $20,000, a fraction of scenario 1. On a property you're now legally barred from selling to the one buyer actually offering real money. The gap between the good year and the bad year is $180,000 on the same runway, same hangars, and same land. Only the paperwork and the market changed. In 1917, Walter Teeter bought a stretch of New Jersey marshland and turned it into what would become Teterboro Airport. After Anthony Fokker, the Dutch aircraft designer, set up shop there in the 1920s, the field became the launch point for some of the most famous flights in aviation history. Richard Byrd's flight over the North Pole, Amelia Earhart's transatlantic crossing. Teterboro never had to hope demand would show up. Its entire value came from one deliberate choice. Sitting just 12 miles from Manhattan, exactly where the highest value aircraft in the country would always need somewhere to land. A century later, it remains one of the busiest general aviation airports in America, not because it has the longest runway or the cheapest fuel, but because whoever built it understood that guaranteed demand beats hopeful demand every time. Step back for a second. The runway is just the runway. Anyone can pour asphalt and paint some numbers on it. None of that is the business. The business is understanding exactly who needs that strip of pavement, how reliably they'll keep needing it, and whether a single signature on a federal grant or a single bulldozer sent out after midnight can take it all away regardless of how well you ran it. Right now, somewhere, there's a small airport with every hangar rented, every landing fee collected on time, and an owner who has never once read the 20-year clause buried in the grant that paid for their runway.